Imagine battling for your life every single day, fighting a disease that drains your strength, your energy, and your hope. Now imagine, on top of that, opening your mailbox to find a letter, not of support, not of compassion, but a demand for money. A lawsuit. Why? Because your grass wasn't trimmed to the exact specifications of your HOA. That's the nightmare a woman named Linda found herself in. And what happened next will leave you furious, but also inspired. Linda was a 54-year-old retired teacher who had lived in her quiet suburban neighborhood for over 20 years. She had always been the kind of neighbor who waved hello, who baked cookies for block parties, and who volunteered at local schools. Everyone knew Linda as the kind of person who always smiled no matter what. But last year, her life took a devastating turn when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. The chemotherapy treatments were brutal. Some days, just getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. Her once strong body was weak, her hair began to fall out, and even walking to the kitchen left her exhausted. She spent her days focused on survival, on healing, and on enduring round after round of treatments. But while Linda was fighting for her life, her lawn was fighting a losing battle of its own. Weeds began to grow taller. The grass, once green and trimmed, turned yellow and patchy. Her flower beds, which she used to love tending, were left untended. It wasn't neglect out of choice, it was necessity. Every ounce of her energy was going into surviving. Most neighbors understood. Some even offered to mow her lawn or water her flowers. But not everyone showed compassion. Enter the HOA president, a woman named Carolyn. Carolyn was notorious in the neighborhood for her rigid obsession with rules. Every holiday decoration had to be measured, every paint color had to be pre-approved, and every lawn had to be maintained to community standards. Carolyn saw Linda's lawn not as a sign of struggle, but as a violation. She began sending notices. First a warning, then a fine. Linda tried explaining. She wrote back, saying she was in chemotherapy, saying she simply couldn't manage the upkeep. She even asked for leniency, or just a little time until she felt better. But Carolyn didn't care. She saw Linda not as a neighbor, but as a problem. Weeks later, Linda opened her mail to find the unthinkable. The HOA had filed a lawsuit against her. They were demanding thousands of dollars in fines and legal fees, all because her lawn wasn't perfect. The stress hit Linda like a second illness. She already lay awake at night worrying about her next hospital visit, about her chances of recovery, about whether she'd live to see her grandchildren grow up. Now, she was also terrified of losing her home, the home she had built her life in. Word spread through the neighborhood quickly. Some residents were outraged. How could the HOA do this to her? One neighbor asked. Others whispered quietly, afraid to speak up against Carolyn. After all, she held power over everyone's property. But Carolyn didn't stop. At the next HOA meeting, she doubled down. "We cannot allow this community to fall into disrepair," she said coldly. "If we make exceptions for one person, then the rules mean nothing." Her words cut through the room like a knife. No compassion, no humanity, just rules. And that's when something unexpected began to happen. A few of Linda's closest neighbors decided enough was enough. They started mowing her lawn for her, planting flowers, and bringing back the beauty of her yard. They wanted to prove that a community should care for its people, not punish them when they're most vulnerable. But when Carolyn saw that, she exploded. She accused the neighbors of interfering with HOA procedures and threatened to fine them too. By now, Linda was crushed. She told her daughter, "I just don't understand. Why can't they see that I'm fighting for my life?" What Linda didn't know was that her fight was about to become bigger than her lawn, because soon her story would spread beyond the HOA. And when the truth came out, the backlash against Carolyn and the HOA would be unlike anything they had ever faced before. The lawsuit against Linda didn't stay quiet for long. One of her neighbors, shocked by the cruelty of the HOA, decided to post about it online. A single Facebook post read, "Our neighbor, a retired teacher battling cancer, is being sued by the HOA because her lawn isn't perfect during chemotherapy. Is this who we are as a community? Within hours, the post spread like wildfire. Neighbors shared it. Friends of Linda commented. And soon it was picked up by local news stations. Reporters showed up outside her modest home, cameras capturing the sight of a frail woman in a headscarf sitting on her porch trying to make sense of the madness. Linda was hesitant at first. She wasn't someone who liked attention. But when the reporter asked her what she wanted to say to the HOA, her words struck a chord across the city. I've given my life to teaching children. I've paid my dues. I'm fighting for my life. And now I'm being punished because I can't cut my grass? The interview aired that night, and people were outraged. Calls poured in. Emails flooded the HOA office. Strangers even started mowing their own neighbors' lawns in solidarity, posting pictures online with the hashtag #CryingLawnForLinda. But instead of backing down, Carolyn doubled down. At the next HOA meeting, she stood in front of the room filled with angry neighbors and TV cameras. Rules are rules, she said stiffly. We cannot bend them just because of someone's personal situation. If we allow exceptions, the neighborhood will fall apart. The gasps in the room were audible. One elderly neighbor shouted, "She's not breaking rules, she's fighting cancer." Another added, "You're destroying this community, not protecting it." Carolyn didn't flinch, but her coldness only fueled the fire. Within days, Linda's story hit national headlines. Major news outlets covered it, painting a picture of an HOA so heartless it was willing to take a cancer patient to court over a lawn. Talk show hosts discussed it. Even politicians chimed in, calling the HOA's actions cruel and un-American. The pressure mounted. Donations started pouring in through online fundraisers. People across the country wanted to help Linda pay her legal fees, cover her medical costs, and keep her home safe. For the first time in weeks, Linda felt something she hadn't in a long time. Hope. But Carolyn wasn't finished. In a stunning move, she announced that the HOA would not only continue the lawsuit, but would also seek damages for the neighborhood's reputation being harmed by the media coverage. It was an outrageous claim, and it backfired spectacularly. The courtroom was packed the day the case went to trial. Neighbors showed up wearing pink ribbons to support Linda. Reporters filled every seat. And sitting in the front row was Linda herself, weak but determined, flanked by her daughter and a lawyer who had taken the case pro bono after hearing about her story. Carolyn and the HOA's attorney tried to argue that the rules must be enforced, without exception. But Linda's lawyer turned to the jury and said, "This isn't about grass. This is about compassion. This is about whether we value human life more than we value the length of a lawn." Every word hit like a thunderclap. When Linda took the stand, her testimony silenced the room. She talked about her years of teaching, the students she'd loved, the families she'd helped. She spoke of the nights she spent sick from chemo, lying awake terrified she wouldn't see another Christmas. And with tears in her eyes, she said, "All I wanted was to survive. And instead I was treated like a criminal because I couldn't cut my grass." The courtroom was still. Even some HOA board members looked ashamed. But the verdict wasn't in yet. And Carolyn still believed she would win. What happened next would not only decide Linda's fate, but would send shockwaves through HOAs across the country. The courtroom was tense as the judge prepared to read the verdict. For Linda, the world seemed to stop. Her hands trembled as her daughter squeezed them tight, whispering, "It's going to be okay, Mom." Across the aisle, Carolyn sat rigid in her seat, arms folded, eyes fixed straight ahead. She still believed the law was on her side, that the rules she clung to so fiercely would crush Linda's plea for compassion. But when the jury foreman stood, the entire room held its breath. The verdict: in favor of Linda. The jury not only threw out the HOA's lawsuit, but also ordered the association to cover Linda's legal fees. Gasps filled the room, followed by applause that the judge didn't bother silencing. Tears streamed down Linda's cheeks as she buried her face in her daughter's shoulder. The weight of fear, stress, and cruelty that had hung over her for months was finally lifted. But it didn't stop there. The story went viral again, this time with a triumphant ending. News outlets ran the headline, "Cancer Patient Defeats HOA in Landmark Case." Social media exploded with support, and the hashtag #LawnForLinda trended nationwide. Neighbors who had once been silent now rallied openly. They began calling for Carolyn's resignation from the HOA. Some even petitioned to dissolve the HOA entirely, arguing that it had lost its purpose and become a tool for bullying rather than community care. Carolyn tried to defend herself in an interview, insisting, "I was just following the rules." But her cold words rang hollow. By then, the world had seen enough. She was voted out of her position within weeks, disgraced and shunned by the very community she claimed to protect. Meanwhile, Linda's life began to change. Donations from around the country poured in, enough to cover not just her legal costs, but also her medical bills. Strangers sent her cards, flowers, and messages of encouragement. Some even traveled to her neighborhood just to mow her lawn or plant flowers in her garden. For the first time in months, Linda's yard bloomed again, not because of rules, but because of love. One evening, as the sun set over her neatly trimmed lawn, Linda sat on her porch with her daughter. She looked around at the flowers, the freshly cut grass, and the neighbors who had become her lifeline. And with a weak but genuine smile, she said, "They tried to break me, but instead they showed me how strong we really are when we stand together." Her story became more than just one woman versus an HOA. It became a symbol, a reminder that communities should lift each other up, not tear each other down. Linda continued her treatments, her spirit renewed by the outpouring of support. And though her battle with cancer was far from over, she faced it with a strength she never knew she had. Because in the end, compassion had triumphed over cruelty. And Carolyn? She faded into the background, a cautionary tale of what happens when rules replace humanity. Linda's fight left behind more than a verdict. It left a legacy, one that would remind HOAs everywhere that grass may grow back. But dignity, once stripped away, leaves scars forever.